was working as an EMT when we received a call to a zoo. The caller said there was a woman in the tiger pen, but that was all we knew. We were right around the corner, so we arrived in less than a minute. When we got to the scene, there was a woman standing 15 feet down, pointing and yelling at what appeared to be her husband, who was staring down at her. People were screaming and yelling for her to climb out, but she ignored them. We quickly gathered that she was upset with her husband over some issue, and jumped in out of spite. He was pleading with her to climb out as people fashioned a rope and threw it down, but she refused. The tigers were starting to circle, and we knew she was going to be a goner if she didn't climb out. The zoo staff were still working on getting their tranquilizer, and they didn't have much time. Then, another woman jumps in, who turns out to be her mother, trying to save her. The tigers closed in faster now, and they grab the mother. Finally, the zookeepers take down the tiger and enter to remove the women. Her mother didn't make it.
I'm an eye doctor. I spend 50% of my day taking foreign objects out of people's eyes. I also spend a significant amount of time dealing with people who cannot understand and/or deal with contact lenses. They don't want glasses, but they cannot perform even the basic requirements of eye care, such as removing them or cleaning them on a regular basis. Last week, a man came in complaining of poor vision and an eye infection. We removed 20 compacted contact lenses from his eye. Instead of removing them, he would simply add a new one when he felt like it. It was like peeling a grape. He was left with significant scarring, and we officially moved him to prescription glasses.
I work as an EMT. We received a call from dispatch regarding a man who apparently stabbed himself in the leg with a knife. Standard procedure is to advise them not to remove the knife, as this could cause more damage. The man replied, "What if I already took it out?" They gave him instructions and told him to wait for the ambulance to arrive. When we entered the house, he was lying on the couch with the knife in his leg. Yes, he put it back in.
I'm a nurse. We had an older woman visit the ER complaining of psychosis. She was worried about intrusive thoughts she was having throughout the day. She said she would have these weird experiences where she couldn't control her body or mind. It would come and go, but she just felt worse and worse throughout the day. I have a discussion with the physician, and he advised that we should consult with the psych unit. Sometimes in these situations, the patient just needs someone to talk to. They get so worked up they convince themselves that something is wrong. Although I thought she was fine, she insisted she needed help, so I began the process. While prepping the patient, a bag of magic mushrooms falls out of her pocket. We tell her that we're going to have to confiscate it. She objects and tries to rationalize how she needs it. It turns out these out-of-body experience and schizophrenic symptoms only happened when she took mushrooms, which was about 10 times a day. We took the mushrooms and released her.
I am a GP. A young male, mid-30s, came in with difficulty going to the washroom and blood in his urine. I had a strong suspicion this was prostate cancer despite his age. I referred him to a specialist and for an MRI. 5 months later, the patient returned. He had gotten progressively worse and was experiencing strong bone pain throughout his lower body. I asked him about the specialist, and he said his girlfriend convinced him to see her homeopath instead. They had been using essential oils for the past months, believing things would improve. When the pain became unbearable, he had to sneak away and come see me. Unfortunately, the cancer had spread too far and he passed within the week. You won't believe this one. I'm a nurse in a major city with a large hospital network. Sometimes I'll be called to cover at one of our sister hospitals. One night, I noticed a child who I had seen before at the other hospital. In fact, I had seen him a couple of times. I remembered him because of a unique birthmark on his arm. While he was waiting for some tests, I checked his chart. It was suspected he had a salmonella infection. This was odd because I could remember that was what he had last time. Most people don't actively contract salmonella multiple times. I informed the doctor, and after some intense probing, it turns out their parents had multiple chickens living in their 500 square foot apartment, and this poor child was actively living with them, often playing and sleeping in their droppings. The child had been diagnosed with salmonella 6 times. The parents moved from hospital to hospital to avoid detection. Child Protective Services were called and took it from there.
Warning: this story is not for the faint of heart. Have you ever heard of degloving? My father was a medic in the military. He told me a story about the accident that led them to ban jewelry. A mechanic was working on a new aircraft bay. He was about 10 feet up and not secured to anything when he slipped. On his way down, he reached out and his ring got caught on a rivet. It didn't just put his finger off. It pulled out the tendons and nerves all the way up to his elbow. It was like taking lobster meat out of the shell.
I work as a nurse doing clinical studies. We had a gentleman come in and spend a few hours with us. We noticed a smell, but obviously didn't say anything. Until one of the senior nurses came in who isn't concerned with being polite and said he either needed to address his smell or leave. He say, "I think it's coming from my wound." We all look at him and ask him if he could please show us. He takes a bandage off his leg, and the smell was putrid. He had a large gash on his leg. Apparently, he had heard it the week before while drinking with some friends. Knowing alcohol reduces the change of infection, they poured some on and patched him up. Except they used beer instead of high-proof liquor. He had given his wound a yeast infection,